Life used to move at the speed of light for Maya. She was a whirlwind of activity, teaching spin classes in a bustling city gym, hiking, challenging trails every weekend upstate, spontaneously booking red-eye flights just to see a new sunrise. Energy hummed beneath her skin, a constant vibrant current that propelled her through days packed with friends, adventure, and the simple joy of movement. Her body felt like a perfectly tuned instrument ready for anything the world threw at it. Independence wasn't just a word, it was the air she breathed, the foundation of who she was. She couldn't imagine it any other way. Then, in a single cruel instant, the music stopped. A mundane Saturday morning drive, a distracted driver running a red light, a violent impact. The details were a blur of screeching metal and shattering glass. The world tilted, and Maya's life was irrevocably altered. In the sterile white quiet of the hospital room, the doctors delivered the news with hushed voices and somber faces. Injuries sustained were severe, recovery would be long, and some damage, they warned gently, might be permanent. At first, Maya clung to hope, believing willpower and physical therapy would rewind the clock, erase the pain, and restore her old self. This was just a temporary setback, a challenging chapter before the return to normalcy. But the weeks turned into months, and the months stretched into years. The sharp, immediate pain of the accident settled into a dull, relentless throb, a constant companion that never truly left. Simple tasks that Maya once did without a second thought, reaching for a high shelf, tying her shoes, walking even short distances, became monumental struggles, often requiring assistance. The vibrant energy that once defined her was now a flicker, overshadowed by exhaustion and discomfort. Every day was a stark reminder of what she had lost. The physical agony was immense, a heavy cloak she wore constantly. Yet even worse was the emotional toll, the quiet despair that settled in as the life-altering change became undeniably permanent. The independence she cherished so fiercely was gone, replaced by a humbling reliance on others. The vibrant current within her felt stagnant, trapped. This wasn't just pain. It was the miserable realization of a future forever altered, a constant internal battle with the hidden struggles of a life lived with chronic limitations. The world outside kept spinning, but for Maya, it felt like everything had been paused indefinitely. Chloe, bless her, persistent soul, wouldn't give up. She'd been a steady presence through the darkest days, offering practical help and quiet support. Now she had a new mission, getting Maya into a pool. "Just try it, Maya," Chloe would coax, her voice gentle but firm. "My cousin says it worked wonders for her back issues. No pressure, just dip your toes." Maya resisted. The thought of navigating a locker room, the potential embarrassment of needing help, the sheer effort of getting in and out. It all felt overwhelming, another reminder of her limitations. Public pools felt like exposing her vulnerability to a world that moved effortlessly. But Chloe was relentless in the kindest way. Finally, more to appease her friend than out of any real hope, Maya agreed. Chloe found a quiet community pool, promising to handle everything. The day arrived, and Maya felt a familiar knot of anxiety tighten in her stomach. Getting ready was a struggle, confirming all her fears. With Chloe's patient help, she finally made it to the edge of the water, feeling exposed and awkward in her swimsuit. The cool, chlorinated air felt alien after years, mostly confined to the dry, predictable world of her apartment. Hesitantly, she began to lower herself into the water. Each degree of temperature change, a small shock. Her muscles, usually tight and screaming in protest, felt a strange, subtle loosening as the water enveloped her. Then she was in, submerged, and something miraculous happened. The weight that had pressed down on her for years, the constant heavy burden of pain, seemed to simply lift. In the water, she was nearly weightless. Tentatively, she moved an arm, then a leg. The sharp, biting agony that usually accompanied any significant movement was gone, replaced by a fluid, gentle glide. She pushed off the side, propelling herself forward with a grace she hadn't felt since before the accident. It was slow, imperfect, but it was movement, uninhibited movement. Tears welled in her eyes, hot against the cool water on her cheeks. It wasn't just physical relief. It was an emotional tidal wave. A sense of freedom long forgotten washed over her. The pool wasn't just water. It was a sanctuary, a place where the rules of gravity and pain seemed to suspend their hold. In that moment, pushing through the water, Maya wasn't defined by her disability. She was just moving, and the feeling was profoundly, breathtakingly hopeful. This simple act of swimming was more than therapy. It was a lifeline, a key, unlocking a door she thought had been permanently sealed. It was the spark of a journey of discovery, revealing a path back to something vital she had lost. From the moment Maya felt that incredible freedom in the water, a new resolve ignited within her. The public pool offered temporary escape, but she craved that feeling every day on her own terms. A private pool wasn't a luxury, it was a necessity, a crucial piece of her well-being. The dream took root, but the path to making it real was daunting. It wasn't just about cost, which was significant, but about logistics planning and overcoming countless obstacles while managing her chronic pain. This was the start of a long, arduous chapter, a true test of her resilience in the face of adversity. First came the financial mountain. Maya meticulously budgeted cut expenses and explored every possible avenue for funding. There were grants for accessibility modifications, loans to research, and endless spreadsheets calculating savings. It meant foregoing other things, living frugally for years, pouring every spare dollar into this singular goal. It was a slow, often frustrating process, marked by setbacks and moments of doubt. There were times the dream felt impossible, a cruel taunt in the distance. Then came the physical and logistical hurdles, finding a contractor who understood the specific needs related to accessibility, navigating zoning laws, and permits overseeing the construction. It all required energy and focus that were often in short supply. There were days Maya was simply too exhausted or in too much pain to deal with phone calls or site visits. Chloe helped where she could, but the ultimate responsibility rested on Maya's shoulders. She learned to push through the fatigue, to advocate fiercely for her needs with builders, to manage timelines and unexpected problems with a stubborn determination she hadn't known she possessed. Months of disruption turned into seasons. The backyard became a construction zone, mounds of dirt, the skeleton of the pool taking shape, the constant hum of machinery. Each step from excavation to tiling felt like a small victory, a tangible sign that the dream was slowly, painfully coming true. There were moments of despair when progress stalled or new issues arose, but the memory of that first swim, the promise of daily relief, kept her going. Finally, after what felt like an eternity of overcoming challenges, the work was complete. The fences were up, the water sparkled under the sun, and the accessible lift was installed, a symbol of thoughtful design and her hard-won independence. Standing at the edge, looking at the finished pool, Maya felt a wave of emotion. It wasn't just a hole in the ground filled with water. It was the culmination of years of effort, a testament to her unwavering commitment to reclaiming her life. Her private sanctuary was finally ready. The first swim in her own pool was everything Maya had dreamed of and more. Stepping down the accessible steps, or using the gentle hum of the lift into the cool, clear water in her own backyard, felt profoundly different from any other experience. There were no strangers watching, no hurried timelines, no energy spent on navigating public spaces. Just Maya, the water, and the sky above. It was immediate, accessible, and utterly her own. She quickly settled into a routine. Every morning, rain or shine, Maya would make her way to the pool. Sometimes it was a vigorous swim pushing through the water to build strength. Other days it was simply floating, letting the buoyancy support her body, allowing the tension and pain to melt away. The water was a constant source of relief, a physical and mental reset button. In the privacy of her high-fenced yard, she could move freely, unapologetically. She could wear whatever she wanted, swim however she needed without a single concerned glance or whispered judgment. The pool became more than just a therapeutic tool. It became her sanctuary, her favorite place in the world. It was where she started her day, where she found peace when the pain flared, where she felt most like herself again. It was a quiet rebellion against the limitations. Her body imposed a daily declaration of independence. The shimmering surface reflected not just the sun, but the renewed hope within her. This private oasis was a testament to her personal triumph, a space where she could finally breathe and move without the constant weight of her struggles. Peace had settled in deep and true here in her own backyard. The quiet rhythm of Maya's neighborhood was gently disrupted when the house 2 doors down sold and new owners moved in. A large moving truck rumbled down the street, followed by a sleek dark SUV. Out of the SUV stepped a woman with sharp features and an even sharper gaze. This was Cassandra. Initial interactions were brief, polite nods from a distance or a curt hello when paths briefly crossed on the sidewalk. Nothing overtly unfriendly, but there was an immediate subtle tension in her presence, a feeling of being assessed. Maya noticed Cassandra observing things. Her eyes seemed to linger a moment too long on Maya's accessible ramp leading up to her porch. She saw Cassandra standing at her own fence line, ostensibly looking at her garden, but her gaze seemed to drift towards Maya's backyard, where the new pool was a glint of blue under the sun. There was a look of intense scrutiny, almost disapproval, in Cassandra's eyes whenever she seemed to catch a glimpse of Maya or her property. It was a subtle, unsettling feeling, like a storm gathering on the horizon. This wasn't typical neighborly curiosity. It felt like an unwelcome, unsolved mystery of intent. Cassandra's arrival had introduced a discordant note into Maya's peaceful existence, hinting at a potential disruption to her hard-won sanctuary. Less than a month after the final touches were put on Maya's pool, the subtle tension escalated dramatically. Maya was enjoying her usual morning swim, the water a soothing balm against her aching muscles, her mind finally quiet. The high fence around her backyard felt like a protective barrier, ensuring her privacy. The only sounds were the gentle lapping of the water and her own steady breathing. It was her sacred space, a place of pure, unadulterated peace. Suddenly, the quiet was shattered. Maya heard the distinct squeak of her side gate opening, followed by footsteps on the gravel path. Her heart leaped into her throat. Who would just walk into her yard? Before she could even call out, a figure emerged from the side of the house and strode onto the paved area surrounding the pool. It was Cassandra. She marched with an air of aggressive entitlement, hands planted firmly on her hips, eyes scanning the yard with blatant disapproval. She didn't offer a greeting, didn't ask permission, simply entered Maya, half submerged in the water, stared utterly bewildered. Cassandra stopped just a few feet from the pool's edge, her gaze fixed on Maya, with an intensity that felt both invasive and hostile. She looked Maya up and down, a clear expression of distaste on her face. Then the bizarre pronouncements began. "Well, look at this," Cassandra stated, her voice loud and cutting, echoing unnervingly in the quiet yard. She gestured dismissively at the pool. "You know this isn't exactly appropriate." Maya blinked, pushing a wet strand of hair from her eyes. "Appropriate. I'm sorry, Cassandra, but what are you doing in my backyard? This is private property." Cassandra ignored the question, her eyes narrowing. "Private property or not, there are rules, federal rules in fact." Her tone dripped with self-importance. "You people aren't supposed to have things like this." Maya felt a cold knot form in her stomach. "You people? What are you talking about? Disabled people." Cassandra spat the words out as if they were distasteful. "It's a liability, a federal issue. You shouldn't be allowed to have pools like this. It's dangerous. You could cause all sorts of problems." Her words were nonsensical, a twisted logic delivered with absolute certainty. She seemed utterly convinced of her own bizarre interpretation of some imagined law. Maya's sanctuary had been breached not just physically, but with a wave of bewildering hostile accusation that felt like an attack on her very right to exist peacefully in her own home. This wasn't just neighborly dispute, it was the beginning of an unforeseen conflict, a direct assault on Maya's personal space. Maya, still in the water, felt a surge of anger, mixed with sheer disbelief. "Cassandra, you need to leave. You're trespassing." "And what in the world are you talking about, federal law? There's no law that says someone with a disability can't own a private pool," Cassandra scoffed, waving a dismissive hand. "Oh, there's jargon, legal jargon about protections and liabilities. It's complicated, but it's all tied up with federal guidelines." She gestured vaguely towards the house, then back at the pool. "It's just not compliant for someone in your situation. It creates an undue burden on the neighborhood you see." Her explanation was a swirling mess of buzzwords and baseless claims, delivered with the conviction of someone who had just invented a new set of rules. It was impossible to reason with. Before Maya could formulate a response to this fresh wave of absurdity, Cassandra's focus shifted, her eyes raking over Maya in the pool. A look of disgust twisted her features. "And honestly," she continued, her voice dripping with disdain, "wearing that in broad daylight when there could be children around or husbands." Maya looked down at her simple, modest swimsuit, then back at Cassandra, utterly floored by the abrupt change in attack. "Wearing what? A swimsuit in my own pool in my own private fenced-in backyard." "It's indecent," Cassandra insisted, stepping closer to the edge. It's a display. Disabled people shouldn't present themselves like that in public. It's frankly disgusting." The sheer audacity of the statement stole Maya's breath for a moment. She was standing in her own yard, wearing a swimsuit in her own pool behind a fence, tall enough to block any view from the street or neighboring yards. There were no children, no husbands seeing anything, unless they were actively trying to trespass and peek over a 6-foot barrier. Then it clicked. This wasn't about federal law or public indecency. This was about something else entirely, something petty and ugly. Cassandra's eyes held a flicker of resentment, a hint of something that tasted like jealousy. Perhaps jealousy of the pool itself, or perhaps bizarrely of the sight of Maya finding freedom and movement in the water. The thought was almost laughable in its pettiness, but the venom in Cassandra's voice was real. "Cassandra," Maya said, her voice now steady, despite the shock. "My fence is 6 feet tall. Nobody can see into this yard, unless they climb it or trespass, which you are currently doing. What I wear in my private pool is absolutely none of your business." Cassandra's face contorted further at being called out. She wasn't interested in logic or facts. Her eyes darted around the yard again, as if looking for another angle of attack. The initial bizarre legal claim had collapsed, revealing a core of simple mean-spirited judgment and a desperate need to find fault. Maya stood her ground, her peaceful sanctuary. Now, the battleground for this woman's irrational behavior. It was clear this confrontation was rapidly spiraling out of the realm of normal neighborly interaction into something far more hostile and perplexing. Taking a deep breath, Maya decided to shift tactics. Engaging with Cassandra's bizarre claims was clearly futile. The priority was to get her out of the yard. "Cassandra?" Maya repeated, her voice firm, but even maintaining a composure she didn't entirely feel. "This conversation is over. You are on my private property without permission. I need you to leave. Now." The simple direct request seemed to ignite a fresh wave of fury in Cassandra. Being asked to leave, told she was trespassing, was clearly an affront to her perceived authority. Her face flushed, and her voice rose to a near shout. "Leave! I'm not leaving. Not until you understand that you can't just do whatever you want here." She gestured wildly at the pool again. "This is a neighborhood. There are rules." "Yes," Maya countered, her voice steady. "And one of the rules is, you don't enter someone else's private property without being invited. Please leave." Cassandra balled her fists, her eyes blazing. "Fine. You want to be difficult. You want to violate regulations. We'll see about that." She puffed herself up, planting her feet firmly. "I'm calling the police right now. This is a public safety hazard. I'll call the city too, and the HOA. They'll shut this down. You won't be swimming in here for long. I can promise you that." She listed her threats with a triumphant, almost gleeful air, clearly believing these pronouncements held immense power and would immediately bring Maya into line. She seemed to think invoking police and city and HOA was the ultimate weapon. Maya simply looked at her, a cool level gaze meeting Cassandra's agitated one. "You are free to call whomever you wish, Cassandra," Maya said calmly, "but you need to leave my property first." Seeing that her threats weren't causing Maya to cower, Cassandra's face twisted in frustration. With a final huffing glare, she turned sharply and marched back the way she came, muttering threats under her breath about not seeing the last of this and making sure this gets handled. The squeak of the side gate closing marked her physical departure, but the echo of her aggressive confrontation and unfounded threats lingered in the air, a clear promise of continued disturbance. Maya was left standing in her peaceful water, her sanctuary momentarily tainted by the storm that had just passed through. Cassandra wasted no time in making good on her implied threat to involve the neighborhood. Over the next few days, a subtle shift became noticeable. Casual sidewalk conversations with other residents felt a little off. Brief exchanges felt shorter, eyes sometimes darted away, and there was a palpable sense of hushed curiosity. Cassandra had opened her own version of a thrilling story, casting Maya as the antagonist in her twisted narrative. Word travels fast in a close-knit community, even one in a large city neighborhood. Cassandra, armed with her distorted version of events, began her whisper campaign. She buttonholed neighbors, recounting her encounter with Maya, exaggerating details and spinning fabrications. She spoke of safety hazards, hinted darkly about potential lawsuits against the neighborhood if something happened, and reiterated her bizarre claims about federal violations, painting Maya as a stubborn, reckless individual, flouting rules and endangering everyone. She even circled back to the indecency angle, framing Maya's private swimming as a public spectacle. Reactions varied. Some neighbors, unfamiliar with Maya's situation, or simply polite to a fault, listened with furrowed brows, perhaps briefly swayed by Cassandra's confident, indignant delivery. Was there really some hidden rule? Could it actually be dangerous? Others who knew Maya or had witnessed Cassandra's abrasive nature firsthand were immediately skeptical, recognizing the rantings for what they likely were: malicious gossip. They'd seen Maya's pool, seen the high fence, and couldn't reconcile Cassandra's claims with reality. It was Chloe who gave Maya the full picture. Over coffee, one morning she recounted a deliberately vague but clearly venomous conversation she'd overheard Cassandra having with another neighbor. "She's telling everyone you've built some kind of illegal structure and that you're a menace," Chloe reported, rolling her eyes. "She's even saying you're flashing people from your pool." Maya felt a cold wave of anger wash over her. Cassandra wasn't just a nuisance. She was actively trying to damage Maya's reputation and turn her community against her. It was a deliberate act of malice, a calculated move to isolate and pressure her. The conflict had officially spread beyond Maya's backyard, becoming an unwelcome public spectacle, orchestrated by Cassandra's relentless gossip. This was no longer just about a pool. It was about reputation and community standing. Hearing about Cassandra's whisper campaigns solidified it for Maya. This wasn't a one-time outburst or a simple misunderstanding. Cassandra was persistent, malicious, and clearly intent on making Maya's life difficult. The threat of police, city, and HOA involvement, coupled with the active spread of harmful rumors, indicated a significant escalation. Reacting defensively wasn't enough anymore. Maya needed to be proactive to build an undeniable record of Cassandra's harassment campaign. Drawing on her inherent resilience, Maya decided to prepare for the worst. She bought a dedicated notebook, labeling it simply Cassandra Log. In it, she began meticulously documenting every interaction, the date and time of Cassandra's trespass, the exact bizarre claims and threats she made, the names of neighbors who reported hearing the rumors, and the content of those rumors as accurately as possible. Nothing was too small to note. Every glare, every muttered comment from across the fence. Every time Cassandra seemed to be loitering near her property line. Maya also started saving everything. If Cassandra sent any texts or emails, mercifully, there hadn't been many direct ones yet, but Maya was ready. They would be archived. She checked her security camera footage, ensuring it was recording clearly and saving any clips that showed Cassandra near or on her property. She even considered discreetly using her phone's voice recorder if another direct confrontation occurred, though she hoped it wouldn't. It felt strange, almost like preparing for a battle she never wanted to fight, but this systematic documentation wasn't about revenge. It was about creating a clear, factual timeline of Cassandra's relentless pursuit, a shield of evidence to protect herself and her sanctuary. Each entry in the logbook, each saved piece of data wasn't just a record of an unpleasant incident. It was a step towards building a solid case, turning her frustration into a strategic defense. Maya was shifting from being a target to being an investigator, quietly gathering the tools she might need to finally put a stop to Cassandra's escalating and unwanted attention. The knock on the front door came on a Tuesday afternoon, just as Maya was easing herself into the cool, inviting water of her pool. The sound was sharp, official, and entirely unwelcome. A knot of anxiety tightened in her stomach. This had to be it. Cassandra had followed through. Quickly, Maya used the accessible lift to get out of the pool, grabbed a towel, and wrapped it around herself. The sudden chill of the air contrasted with the warmth she'd felt just moments before. She made her way slowly through the house, drying off as best she could, the quiet peace of her home replaced by the drumming of her own heart. Through the peephole, she saw two uniformed police officers standing on her porch. Taking a deep breath, Maya opened the door. Their expressions were polite but neutral, the practiced faces of officers responding to a routine complaint. "Ms. Torres," one of them asked. Consulting a notepad, Maya confirmed her name. "We've received a complaint regarding a public indecency," he continued, glancing awkwardly at his partner. "Something about activity in your backyard pool." Maya met their gaze calmly. She didn't need to pretend ignorance. "Yes, I have a pool. I was swimming in it just now, in a swimsuit. In my private fenced-in backyard." The officers exchanged a brief, almost imperceptible look. It was the first hint that perhaps this wasn't the straightforward indecency call Cassandra had likely framed it as. "The complaint mentioned," the second officer began, "that the activities were visible and causing distress." "May I ask who filed the complaint?" Maya inquired. already knowing the answer. The first officer hesitated for a split second. "It came from your neighbor, Ms. Carlson, I believe. 2 doors down. Cassandra Carlson," Maya confirmed. "And as I said, I was swimming in my pool. My backyard has a 6-foot privacy fence all the way around it. The only way someone could see anything is if they trespassed onto my property and deliberately tried to look over the fence, which Ms. Carlson has already done." The officers exchanged another look. This one more telling. A flicker of recognition perhaps of Cassandra's name or a type of complaint they'd encountered before. "Would it be all right if we just took a look at the setup?" The first officer asked, his tone now less official, more observational. "Of course," Maya said, leading them through the house and out to the backyard. As they stepped out, their eyes scanned the area. The high fence, the pool, the well-maintained space. They walked towards the fence line, peering over it towards Cassandra's property, then back towards the street and other neighbors. Their professional masks began to slip. Confusion, then visible exasperation crossed their faces. It was abundantly clear, even without Maya saying another word, that Cassandra's claims of visibility and indecency were wildly baseless. The first officer turned back to Maya, shaking his head slightly. "All right, Ms. Torres, thank you for your time. It appears there's no issue here." His partner added a touch of weariness in his voice. "Looks pretty private to us." They offered brief, almost apologetic nods. "Sorry to bother you," the first officer said. "Seems like a bit of a misunderstanding. We get interesting calls sometimes." The implication hung in the air. Cassandra was one of those interesting calls. As they walked back towards the gate, the professional politeness returned, but their body language spoke volumes. They looked less like officers investigating a crime, and more like tired referees dealing with a child's petty squabble. Maya watched them leave, the click of her gate sounding much more final this time. The police visit, initially a source of anxiety, had turned into external validation. Cassandra's unfounded allegations had been exposed for their absurdity by the very authority figures she had tried to weaponize. It was a small but significant victory in this escalating neighborly dispute. Closing the door after the police left, Maya leaned against it, the towel still wrapped around her. A wave of relief washed over her. They had seen the truth. They hadn't taken Cassandra seriously. Her sanctuary remained untouched, her right to use it validated, but the relief quickly faded, replaced by a simmering righteous anger. Cassandra hadn't just complained, she had lied, trespassed, spread rumors, and weaponized law enforcement, however ineffectively, to try and disrupt Maya's life, and take away her most vital source of relief and independence. This wasn't just a difficult neighbor. This was harassment, malicious, persistent, and utterly unacceptable. The thought solidified in Maya's mind. Cassandra couldn't be allowed to continue, not only for Maya's own peace, but to prevent her from doing this to anyone else. Threats, rumors, false reports to the authorities, it had to stop. And if Cassandra wouldn't stop on her own, Maya would have to make her. Standing in her hallway, the damp swimsuit beneath the towel, a reminder of her brief moment of peace shattered, Maya made a decision. This wasn't just about the pool anymore. It was about protecting her home, her rights, and her dignity. She would fight back, not with angry words or petty retaliation, but with the full force of the law. She walked to her computer, the police visit still fresh in her mind, and began to search. She needed a lawyer. Not just any lawyer, but someone who understood the nuances of harassment, property rights, and perhaps even disability law. Someone who would see past the bizarre nature of the complaint to the real harm being done. Someone who would be as determined as she was to see justice served. The real fight was about to begin. This was the start of her legal battle to reclaim peace. Maya's search for a lawyer led her to the firm of Sterling and Associates, known for their work in civil litigation and property disputes. She made an appointment and gathered all her meticulously collected evidence, the Cassandra log notebook filled with dates and details, printouts of texts, if any existed, notes on Cassandra's bizarre claims, and the police report number from the public indecency call. Walking into the lawyer's office, Maya felt a mix of nerves and resolute determination. She was introduced to Sarah Sterling, a woman with a sharp, intelligent gaze and a no-nonsense demeanor that immediately put Maya at ease. Maya explained the situation, starting with the importance of the pool to her well-being, describing Cassandra's uninvited intrusion, her strange accusations about federal law and indecency, the escalating threats, the rumor spreading and culminating with the absurd police visit. As Maya spoke, Sarah listened intently, occasionally asking a clarifying question. When Maya presented her organized binder of documentation, Sarah's eyes lit up. She took the notebook and began to read, flipping through the pages, her initial professional interest deepening into something more like focused enthusiasm. "Wow," Sarah murmured, looking up from the logbook. "You've been very thorough, Ms. Torres. This is excellent." Sarah spent the next 20 minutes poring over the details, asking about specific incidents, particularly the recorded claims and the police interaction. Her questions were pointed at her understanding of the legal implications immediate. She didn't dismiss the bizarre nature of Cassandra's behavior. Instead, she saw it as key evidence of harassment and intent to cause distress. Putting the binder down, Sarah leaned forward, a slight smile playing on her lips. "Ms. Torres, based on what you've told me and this documentation, I believe you have a very strong case. This is clearly harassment bordering on intentional infliction of emotional distress and trespass." Her false reports to the police are also significant. She began to outline the potential legal strategy, speaking clearly and confidently about filing a civil suit, seeking an injunction to prevent Cassandra from contacting Maya, or coming onto her property and pursuing damages for the emotional distress and disruption Cassandra had caused. Sarah spoke with genuine passion, not just for the legal process, but for defending Maya's right to peace and safety in her own home. "This isn't just about winning," Sarah said, her voice firm. "It's about sending a clear message that this kind of behavior is unacceptable and has serious consequences." Frankly, Ms. Carlson seems to have dug her own legal grave with her actions and her documented statements. Leaving Sarah's office, Maya felt a weight lift from her shoulders. She wasn't alone in this fight anymore. She had found a capable, enthusiastic advocate in Sarah, someone who saw the legitimacy of her struggles and the strength of her position. The legal battle ahead wouldn't be easy. But with Sarah by her side and a mountain of meticulously gathered evidence, Maya felt a renewed sense of power and confidence. This wasn't just a lawsuit, it was a quest for vindication and justice led by her sharp new lawyer. Just as Maya was beginning to feel a quiet sense of confidence after meeting with Sarah, a new disruption arrived. The doorbell rang unexpectedly one evening. Peering through the peephole, Maya saw Cassandra standing on her porch, and beside her, a man Maya recognized faintly as her husband, Arthur. Arthur shifted his weight awkwardly, avoiding looking directly at the door. Maya hesitated for a moment, then opened the door, keeping a firm hand on the knob. Cassandra stood tall, a look of smug triumph on her face, clearly believing she held all the cards. Arthur just looked uncomfortable. "Maya," Cassandra began, her voice dripping with false politeness, "we wanted to let you know, as a courtesy. You've left us no choice." She puffed out her chest slightly. "We're filing a lawsuit against you." Maya raised an eyebrow slightly, betraying none of her internal reaction. "Yes," Cassandra pressed on, glancing at Arthur, who gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. "Arthur has spoken to his associates, very good lawyers, from his golf club, you know." She emphasized the golf club part as if it lent an air of unbeatable sophistication and power to their legal team. "They're preparing the case now. You'll be hearing from them very soon. You'll regret not just doing what we said." Arthur managed a weak, tight-lipped smile that didn't reach his eyes. He clearly wanted to be anywhere, but standing on Maya's porch, announcing a ridiculous lawsuit. Maya met Cassandra's gaze calmly, a faint, almost imperceptible smile touching her own lips. "Is that so, Cassandra? Well, I appreciate you coming by to inform me." She paused, letting the weight of her calm sink in against Cassandra's bravado. "Thank you for the information, Arthur." She nodded politely at him. Before Cassandra could launch into another tirade, Maya firmly but politely closed the door. The click of the lock felt incredibly satisfying. Standing on the other side, Maya couldn't help but smile. Cassandra's attempted intimidation, her reliance on golf club lawyers, was almost comical. It only reinforced her delusion and Maya's confidence. Let them come. Maya had Sarah, and she had the truth. This was just another ridiculous move in Cassandra's losing game. A desperate counterattack fueled by pure hubris. News of Maya's lawsuit against Cassandra, quickly followed by the equally astonishing news of Cassandra and Arthur's counter-threat, spread through the neighborhood like wildfire. This wasn't quiet gossip anymore. It was the main topic of conversation, over fences at the local coffee shop and during evening walks. The abstract rumors Cassandra had been spreading were now being weighed against the concrete reality of legal action, and the community was choosing sides, and they were siding with Maya neighbors who had been subjected to Cassandra's abrasive personality, or witnessed her bizarre behavior firsthand, found themselves validating Maya's claims. The sheer absurdity of the federal law and indecency arguments became even clearer when discussed openly. Maya's quiet dignity and resilience, evident even through her struggles, stood in stark contrast to Cassandra's loud, aggressive entitlement. People began talking openly about Cassandra's trespass, her strange fixation on Maya's pool, and the obvious height of Maya's fence. The fact that Cassandra had involved the police only for them to leave without incident spoke volumes. Arthur's awkward presence during Cassandra's lawsuit announcement was noted and commented upon, painting a picture of a man reluctantly dragged into his wife's increasingly irrational crusade. The result was swift and decisive. Social ostracism for Cassandra and Arthur sidewalk. Waves from other residents became rare or non-existent. Conversations stopped abruptly when they approached invitations to neighborhood gatherings seemed to dry up. Arthur in particular seemed to visibly shrink, the casual camaraderie he might have once shared with other male residents evaporating. Their house, once just another home on the street, now felt like an island isolated by Cassandra's own making. Maya felt a quiet sense of gratitude for her neighbors' support. She hadn't actively campaigned for their allegiance beyond simply telling the truth when asked. But seeing the community coalesce around her, recognizing the injustice of Cassandra's actions, was a powerful affirmation. The neighborhood conflict had reached a point of no return, and the lines had been drawn. Cassandra's attempt to isolate Maya had backfired spectacularly, leading instead to her own complete social isolation in the very community she had tried to manipulate. This was the turning tide in the unwanted attention Maya had been receiving. The legal gears began to grind. While Maya was spared the grueling drama of a full-blown trial, Sarah worked diligently behind the scenes. There were filings, motions, and the quiet pressure of a strong case built on meticulous documentation and Cassandra's own erratic behavior. Maya received occasional updates from Sarah, a brief phone call discussing a legal maneuver, an email summarizing a communication with the opposing counsel, presumably Arthur's golf club lawyers. Each update, however brief, reinforced the fact that Cassandra's actions had tangible, serious consequences. The focus of the narrative shifted away from Maya's direct confrontations with Cassandra and towards the inevitable fallout happening just 2 doors down. Though Maya didn't witness it directly, the tension radiating from Cassandra and Arthur's house was palpable. In the neighborhood air, arguments muffled, but clearly heated, were rumored to erupt behind their closed doors. Arthur's car, once a regular sight, was seen less frequently parked outside, perhaps a sign he was spending more time away, whether at his office or perhaps literally at the golf club, seeking refuge from the storm. Cassandra had unleashed, signs of distress became more apparent. The meticulously manicured lawn at Cassandra's house started to look neglected. Curtains remained drawn for long stretches of the day. The air of aggressive confidence Cassandra had once worn like a shield seemed to crack, replaced by a strained defensive posture whenever she was forced to venture out, usually just to get the mail or quickly dart into her car, her sharp gaze once directed outwards. In judgment now seemed to hold a hunted, cornered look. One afternoon, Maya saw a real estate agent's car parked outside Cassandra's house for an extended period. Days later, a discreet for sale sign appeared in their yard. The sight was a stark visual representation of the legal pressure. A lawsuit, especially one involving trespass, harassment, and potentially significant damages for emotional distress, could be incredibly costly, far outweighing the value of frivolous counterclaims. Cassandra's golf club lawyers, facing Sarah's solid evidence and the clear absurdity of their client's position, were likely advising settlement, and a forced sale might be the only way to cover the financial blow. This wasn't the dramatic courtroom showdown of a television show, but the consequences were just as real. The legal system, slow and deliberate as it could be, was acting as the mechanism of the reckoning. Cassandra and Arthur, bound together by Cassandra's actions, were facing the tangible fallout: financial strain, marital tension, and the unraveling of their lives in the neighborhood they had hoped to dominate. The legal battle was forcing them to confront the reality of their situation, proving that even seemingly minor acts of persistent harassment could lead to devastating personal and financial costs. The peace in Maya's backyard was slowly being mirrored by the growing turmoil next door. Weeks after the for sale sign appeared, the rumbling sound of large trucks once again filled the quiet street. This time, they weren't bringing new neighbors. They were taking the old ones away. Maya saw the removal trucks parked outside Cassandra and Arthur's house. For 2 days, movers carried boxes and furniture out of the house that had been the source of so much disruption. Maya didn't watch constantly, but she couldn't help but notice the activity. She saw Cassandra looking smaller and less imposing than she had during their furious confrontations, directing movers with sharp, clipped gestures. She saw Arthur, his shoulders slumped, carrying smaller boxes himself, his face etched with a weariness that went beyond physical exertion. There was no bravado left, no air of entitlement, just the quiet, undeniable process of being uprooted. The neighborhood seemed to hold its breath, witnessing the quiet public conclusion to the drama that had consumed them. There were no farewells, no waves from other residents. Cassandra and Arthur left as they had largely lived since the conflict began, isolated and unwelcome. The final closing of the moving truck doors, the pulling away of the vehicles marked not just a physical departure, but the end of Cassandra's reign of attempted intimidation. Slowly, peace began to seep back into the street. The tension dissipated, replaced by the familiar, comfortable rhythm of normal neighborhood life. Conversations resumed, waves were exchanged, and the sense of a dark cloud lifting was almost palpable. With Cassandra gone, Maya's backyard truly became her sanctuary once more. There were no longer furtive glances over the fence, no fear of unexpected intrusion, no bizarre accusations echoing in the quiet air. The high fence now served its intended purpose, providing simple, undisturbed privacy. One morning, Maya made her way to the pool. The sun was shining, the water was perfectly still, reflecting the blue sky above. She went through her routine, preparing to enter the water. There was no knot of anxiety in her stomach, no lingering tension in her muscles, just the simple anticipation of therapeutic relief. Stepping into the pool, she felt the familiar, blessed sensation of weightlessness. The water embraced her, soothing the chronic aches, but also washing away the last vestiges of stress and anger that Cassandra had inflicted. She pushed off the side, gliding through the water with renewed freedom. This was what she had fought for. This was the dream fully realized, no longer under siege. Swimming in her pool, Maya felt a profound sense of peace and accomplishment. She had faced an unforeseen conflict, endured persistent harassment, and pursued a difficult legal battle. She hadn't cowered or been driven away. She had stood her ground, documented the truth, and used the system to protect herself. The pool, her lifeline, was safe. Her home was her sanctuary again. The peace restored was not just the absence of conflict, but the quiet, powerful presence of hard-won victory and the reclamation of her independence and well-being. The thrilling story of her battle with Cassandra was over-ending, with a triumphant return to the simple, vital act of swimming in her own private oasis. Here are some key life lessons and practical advice from Maya's story. The compelling narrative of Maya finding peace and confronting a difficult neighbor holds potent lessons for us all. It reminds us that even after facing life-altering changes, discovering unexpected solutions is possible. Keep an open mind and explore new paths to well-being. Building a personal sanctuary, whether physical or emotional, often requires resilience in the face of adversity and unwavering persistence. Trust your determination and keep working towards your goals. A key takeaway is the vital importance of establishing and defending your boundaries. Don't hesitate to stand up against persistent harassment or disrespectful behavior that disrupts your peace, whether it's in your home, workplace, or online. Gathering clear evidence of problematic interactions can be a powerful step in protecting yourself. Remember that seeking support from friends or experts is a sign of strength, not weakness. Maya's story is a personal triumph that underscores the fact that you have the right to live freely and peacefully, and sometimes defending that right requires taking determined action to ensure vindication and justice.